against the possessors of such instincts. That is the origin of bad conscience. Now here's the end of the second essay. Nietzsche writes, "Man has all too long had an evil eye for his natural inclinations, so they have finally become inseparable from his bad conscience. An attempt at the reverse would in itself be possible, but who is strong enough for it? That is, to wed the bad conscience to all the unnatural inclinations, to all those aspirations to the beyond, to that which runs counter to sense, instinct, animal, in short, all ideals hitherto, which are one and all hostile to life, and ideals that slander the world." Then Nietzsche proceeds to describe the individual whose bad conscience has focused only on his unnatural inclinations, this new kind of person, in terms very similar to Zarathustra's high-flown descriptions of the overman from Thus Spoke Zarathustra, the book that Nietzsche had written a couple years before. How does he describe this person? He describes him as the redeeming man of great love and contempt, this bell stroke of noon, and of the great decision that liberates the will again and restores its goal to earth and its hope to man. Okay, there's this part in Zarathustra where, in terms very much like these, Zarathustra describes the overman. He talks about how the overman is the meaning of the earth, and the moment where he comes is the great noon. And after saying this in Genealogy of Morals, Nietzsche then just cuts himself off and says, on this he should be silent, because speaking on this topic is something for which only Zarathustra has a right. Zarathustra, the godless. I take the overman to be the person who is being described in this extended way in the second essay. The person who has stopped feeling guilty about his natural inclinations and instead has a value system that keeps acting on his natural inclinations and specifically opposes repressing them. Rather than being sort of torn up by internal conflict between natural instincts and desires and one's values, like the sort of repressed Victorians of Nietzsche's era, this person could act in a wholehearted fashion that expressed not only natural inclinations, but values that went along and supported those natural inclinations. On the account that I've given, that would make the overman's world rich with value, in a way that Nietzsche thought his world and the world of his contemporaries weren't. While his contemporaries were internally divided, having positive passions, for some things, but also sort of negative attitudes for those things, in a way that canceled out and left the world kind of poor in value. Things have a value positively because you desire them, but also like disvalue because your Victorian values tell you that it's really bad to pursue those things. So you end up with a world that's kind of gray and without value on balance. Well, if you have all strong desires and strong values pushing in the same way, then you can have things that are valuable in a way that you don't have when you're internally divided on the subjectivist view. So that's what I think is the big deal about the overman. It is someone whose positive values and natural inclinations have become mutually reinforcing, allowing them to act in this wholehearted, full-bodied kind of way. I think to us today it seems like a little bit like, oh, okay, so he was making a big deal about that. I mean, at least to me it seems a little bit like, is that really such a strange and surprising thing? Back then in Nietzsche's time, I could see why it might have seemed like a bit less of I guess, minor thing, more of a big deal. Back in a time where prevailing moral attitudes were a lot more opposed to the passions than they are now. So one might say here, well, that's good for the overman, but why should anyone else care about the overman? Sure, he's going to be in this world full of value. Why does anyone else care about this? On a subjectivist view, things are only valuable for those who have the appropriate passions. Now, it's an interesting fact that, there maybe, if history goes the right way, there will be somebody in the future whose world is rich with value in this way, but why does it have any consequences for what's valuable for me? This takes me to the character of Zarathustra himself, and why Nietzsche wrote his favorite work using this fictional character as a mouthpiece. So here's the story I want to tell about that. Nietzsche himself had very strong feelings about the excellence of certain kinds of passionate people, and the contemptible lack of excellence of people who are not so passionate. But as a human being, there's a lot more to Nietzsche than this. A lot more to him than this part of his theory. He's a human being, and there's a lot more desires and passions he has. Writing through Zarathustra allows Nietzsche to set aside all of his other passions and just take the ones that are important and philosophically interesting to him and give the fictional character those. Then, the things that are said about the Overman will be accurate expressions of Zarathustra's entire being. They will express Zarathustra's passion for the creation of this excellent person, which really is the thing that matters to Zarathustra. This is why Zarathustra goes around making all these speeches. He's trying to like change people's values in such a way that allows the Overman to come about. And at the end of the book, Zarathustra goes down from his cave and abandons the higher man. To do, it's not clear what, but to do something involves creating the Overman. It's not clear exactly how or why he has to leave them. This has gone into it enough detail to see exactly what the strategy is, but that's the idea. And that's why I think Nietzsche hushes himself at the end of the second essay of the genealogy, that passage I was discussing before, because he, who has the right to praise the Overman? Only the person whose passions are rightful. That's Zarathustra. Last big juicy topic from Zarathustra, the eternal recurrence. This is this cosmological hypothesis where our universe is this inescapable temporal loop, so that the same events, including our lives, will repeat them eternally over and over again. Nietzsche isn't interested in this because he thinks it's true, as far as we can tell. Arguments that this is really going to happen, that like our universe is actually a circular time kind of universe or a looping universe, and things will repeat themselves exactly as they are over and over again. You only see positive arguments for that, that Nietzsche seems to like really genuinely believe in his unpublished writings, where it looks like he was just trying to like work this out, and eventually he realized, no, look, yeah, this really doesn't work. I can't give a good argument that things are going to go this way, so let's not put this in the book. What you do see is fictional characters, proclaiming the eternal recurrence in Thus Spoke Zarathustra. And it's always sort of in somebody's mouth, it's said. So I think Nietzsche here is trying to say, he's not ever laying this out as this is the way this will happen. What his interest in is what kind of attitude would you have towards the universe, where everything looped around and came back to be exactly as it is now, over and over again. An infinite number of times. This is what the first time it comes up is the end of the gay science. He presents a scenario where a demon comes to you and tells you that this is going to happen. And he asks, would you not throw yourself down and gnash your teeth and curse the demon who spoke thus? Or did you once experience a tremendous moment when you would have answered him, you are a god, and never have I heard anything more godly? Okay, so you either are going to like hate this or you're going to love it, and apparently, or Nietzsche thinks, says a lot about you, which one you do. Much of Thus Spoke Zarathustra, the book, a lot of the second half of the book, is about Zarathustra is wandering around, this idea hits him, at first he's horrified by it, and later on he comes to love it. And when he comes to love it, this is the end of the third section of Thus Spoke Zarathustra, why does he come to love it? Well, he lays out all these awesome things he gets to do in his life, things he really cares about, and says, you know, if I am the kind of person who gets to do these things, some of them are just kind of like, well, they're the things Zarathustra does. Like, he loves to sit in broken churches and like watch the red poppies grow up in like the ground of these broken abandoned churches. You know, as I am one who loves to do this, who gets to do this, you know, how could I not, you know, lust for the ring of eternal recurrence? You know, that's basically he lists these 7 groups of things that he likes to do, and it's like, look, how could I not want my life to go again and again, given that I love what's going on in my life so much? I think the reason Nietzsche cares about your attitude towards the eternal recurrence is that it says something about how your passions are oriented towards the world. Someone who lacks passions for life, or whose world is full of disvalue because of your aversion to the things around you, you will respond negatively to the news that your life will recur eternally. If you don't see the world as rich with value because your passions are in disorder in some way, then you respond negatively to this news. But if your passions for life are strong, and you love things around you, your world is rich with value, and you want them to come back again. You want to be here again, doing the things you're doing again, and the things you love again. And then you will embrace this idea with the kind of fervor that Zarathustra does. Okay. Just one sort of last set of concluding remarks. So let me just answer this question about the way that I've presented this whole picture. I've said Nietzsche is an error theorist of moral value, and he wants us to appreciate a certain kind of value that comes out of our passions. But one of the funny things is this kind of value really isn't anything new. We had passions all along. This value was always there. In what sense is this some kind of like amazing new thing? Well, here's how I think that, and Nietzsche often talks about creating new values. In what sense is there anything creative or new here? We're just like looking at values we already had that we didn't really think about them in that way. What's new about this? Here's what I think is going on. Our awareness of the significance that this kind of value has in our lives. That's sort of the change that happens. What's new in the Nietzschean picture is we become aware that like this is the kind of value to care about, not moral value, not doing the morally right thing, but living this kind of like life ruled by one's passions and being driven by them and acting on them and having very strong passions of a world that's being full of value. Regarding your ascetic moral values as the standards for living this life, Nietzsche wants you to see the standards for living a good life as coming out of your passions and their objects. Now, this obviously is not anything like a good moral theory. Your passions might lead you to do all sorts of things that are contrary to the aims of society, destructive, whatever. But Nietzsche doesn't take himself to be giving a moral theory. Now, I'm not like Nietzsche. I'm not an error theorist about morality. I'm actually like one of these utilitarians who he very much disliked and all that. But as an account of what a certain kind of value that isn't moral value, but is a pretty big deal to people in their lives is, well, that's what he's giving. And it's a kind of value that makes our world look, well, rich with value. If we have the right passions, that's the way the world looks to us. And I think he is getting at something about value that's really a big chunk of the kind of non-moral value there is. Cool, thanks.
So, we'll take a 5-minute